very much. And often people don't associate palliative care and fun. I've been doing education in palliative and end-of-life care for pretty much most of my career as a nurse. So I'm happy to bring, I think, a fun and engaging activity, thought-provoking activity that you can use with your team members. I certainly want to acknowledge my colleague, Ruth Richardson, who's been an incredible mentor for me in education and hospice palliative care. She's an educator from Algonquin College, and as well my colleagues from the Bruyere Center for Learning, Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care, Melissa Donskoff and Tracy Luciani. This is just the recognition of who's been involved in these projects, and I think I'm going to hopefully share with you a few of the wonderful resources that have been developed as part of the Centers for Learning and Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care. So the particular initiative I'm going to talk to you about is one of a few educational projects that we worked on in Ottawa. This was a project to develop and support role development specifically aimed at personal support workers, but certainly could be used for any team members. We've developed 4 bilingual learning modules and a facilitator's guide to support the development of communication skills at the end of life for personal support workers and others working in long-term care. And so the focus of the 4 modules, one is on defining what is hospice palliative care and discussing the philosophy of care. The second module is of reflections on grief and loss. The third is focusing on the development of therapeutic relationships, and the fourth is around specific development of communication skills. So what we've done in regard to this, we have run through this workshop 3 times, or the series of workshops, the 4 modules 3 times, twice in English and once in French. We've also delivered a Train the Trainer session, and as I mentioned, we've created the bilingual educational resources for long-term care homes to use. And I'm just going to quickly highlight where you can find those. This is the website for the Ontario CLRIs, and if you go to the resources section, here you can see resources from Schlegel and Baycrest, as well as the Bruyere Center for Learning, Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care, the CLRI, I'll say that from now on. My 40-year-old eyes are struggling here, just around education. So the resources available are under that second bullet, the education delivery. And you can see there's a number of different resources, but the resources that I'm talking about, so the communication at end of life, the modules are here, as well as the facilitator's guide. So if you'd like to use any of those tools, and within the facilitator's guide, we've given some suggestions around how, if you've only got 15 minutes and you want to talk about the philosophy of hospice palliative care, if you want to talk about a palliative approach to care, there's exercises in there that you can do. And we actually have a values clarification exercise very similar to what you guys guided us through as well. So that's where we're at. And so what I'm going to share with you now is just a small exercise that's part of one of the modules, that first one around describing what is hospice palliative care. And so the big point that we try to get across to the participants is that a palliative approach is appropriate for anybody living with or at risk of developing a life-threatening situation. And this is all from the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, their model to guide hospice palliative care. And so you can see with that definition, it's quite very relevant for people living in long-term care and their families. And so the big key is that it's aiming to address those holistic care needs. So, and I've heard that mentioned throughout our couple of days together. So what this exercise I'm going to show you is really getting at is helping people to understand those holistic care needs and what needs that residents might experience that could fit into these different categories of needs. So I'm not going to read this out to you. When we do the exercise, I'll put this slide back up so you can see it, but we're trying to get across that people are more than physical needs. They're more than emotional needs, more than social needs. They're really a whole that is made up of all those different needs. So So the exercise we're going to do together is Betty, the domain game, and the residents that we work with deal with the cards they're dealt. So I'm going to pass out, sorry. Is this on? Okay. We have some handouts for people. So this is a case study as well as the instructions for the game. And what I'd ask people to do is get into groups of 4 people. And unfortunately, I have to be kind of prescriptive on that because the game works in groups of 4. The number of cards that we have. So if people can get into groups of 4, that'd be excellent. So basically, the overall objective of this activity is to get you thinking about a specific case and actively apply those domains of care to the case. So what I'd ask each group to do is just actually take a minute and read the case. And I'm going to guide you through this exercise kind of step by step. So I'll just have people read the case and get a sense of Betty's care needs or Betty's situation. Okay, so hopefully folks have had a chance to get a sense of who Betty is. Now, what I'd like each group to do is to designate a dealer. Okay, does everybody? It's a big responsibility to be the dealer. So, once you've designated your dealer, I'd like your dealer to take the cards that are clipped. So there are 8 domain cards, and distribute 2 domain cards to each person in your group. Okay, so each person has 2 domain cards. Now what I'd like you to do is distribute 6 issue cards to each participant. Okay, so now the object of the game, this is really important, it's the object of the game, is for each person to have 3 issue cards that go with their domain cards. All right, so if you had the physical domain card, you want 3 issue cards that go with your physical domain card. So what you're going to do, does everybody have their 6 cards and their 2 cards now? We're all good? So I'm going to put back this slide, and what you're going to do is look at your issue, and if it relates to one of your domain cards, you're going to keep it in your hand. If it does not, we're going to get into a process of passing. So you're going to pass the cards that don't relate to your domain cards to the left and accept cards from your right. What we'll do now is we'll move to the next step of the game. So you've kind of done, we'll start with round 1, where you were going to share what domain cards you had, and then you will share the 3 cards that you have that match up with the domains, the 3 issue cards. So basically this is now a time of sharing and discussion of why do you think, so I know that there's a card that says it raises Betty's spirits to play the piano. So whoever had that issue card, did you put that under spiritual? Did you put that under emotional? Explain to your team why you might have categorized things in the way that you did. Okay, what we'll do now is we'll head into round 3 of the game, and so this is basically a time for you to discuss as a team. I know you didn't probably get through all 4 members of the team talking about what they have, but this is a time now where you can move cards. So if somebody's made a compelling argument that, playing the piano raises Betty's spirits is really emotional and not spiritual, or vice versa, you can move the cards around. And so this way you might have more than 3 cards per domain. I'd like to open things up to kind of, what do you see as some of the key learnings from this activity? Or what are some observations that you had as you were participating in the activity?
Sort of just stating the obvious that lots of cards fit under different, like lots of issues fit under different cards. So we were, talking how, well, this could be psychological and spiritual, or this could be social, or so there was a lot of, and you know what, it could very well be like in the moment with someone who's dying or palliative or end of life, right?
And I purposefully gave you, we have different iterations of Betty's situation. I purposely gave you kind of an earlier stage of Betty's experience to help you realize, again, this idea that the palliative approach and looking at those holistic domains is something we should be doing even earlier on in people's trajectory within long-term care. So definitely the idea of people don't fit and their needs don't fit into nice little boxes, I think, is an important one. Other observations or learnings? Everybody's tired, eh? Yeah.
I just like the way it unfolded. The conversation is happening in your head first, and about how you do the domains, and then you start to, after you've already had that internal conversation, you're starting to have an external conversation. So.
Thank you very much. And I think that's the benefit of the exercise. So if there's no other comments, I think I'll just go on to kind of how we see this exercise supporting culture change. And I've got 2 mics. So I'll put one down. The idea or the emphasis on holistic care needs, recognizing a humane and life-affirming approach and meeting the person's needs wherever they're at. And I think that's certainly been a key message of our time together. The education initiatives that we've done overall really emphasize a re-examination of people's values, beliefs, and attitudes, especially as they relate to hospice, palliative care, and a palliative approach in the context of long-term care. And then, so kind of the top 3 recommendations, and these kind of come from being an educator, delivering this material, working with the personal support workers, recognizing that different people will assimilate information related to hospice palliative care and that approach in different ways. And so we need a variety of approaches to learning. So as part of these modules, we have individual exercises, a lot of group exercises, there's videos, there's songs, there's all sorts of different approaches. My big thing is considering integrating a palliative approach in your long-term care setting. Don't just save it for the end of life. We have some really rich discussions as part of these modules around the palliative approach and holistic care needs and the importance of integrating it early around care decision making and pain and symptom management and those kinds of things. And then I think the other big thing, and I delivered these 4 modules to a group of Francophone personal support workers in the winter, and it was such a privilege to be with them. And I certainly felt the commitment and the love that they felt for the residents that they were working with, and that it was, they were experiencing losses. And so it's really important to recognize that when you're doing education around these sensitive subjects. And that's another piece that we've integrated into the facilitator's guide, is saying, what might you expect in terms of people's reaction to this material, and how might you, as an educator or as a facilitator, deal with those things as they may pop up?
My question is, it might be a big one, but when you're looking at palliative care, it's one thing, but what about the discussion that's underway right now with assisted dying and that? Is it a conversation that you're having as you look forward?
It is not one that we have addressed as part of these modules. I would anticipate, I'm trying to think, when I delivered it in French, it didn't come up as a topic. I know certainly when I've done other palliative education initiatives, it does inevitably come up. we haven't planned at this point to re-emphasize that content. I mean, to me, it's part of the decision making, and I think it's going to come up as something that people might be asking for, and we'll have to enter into it, but I think we'll enter into it with a set of principles that hopefully we already use around decision making at the end of life and advanced care planning and those kinds of things. Kind of skirted around it, but the short answer is no. Anything else? So I will just say we are planning on, again, as Raquel said, depending on how the funding goes with the CLRIs, we will be probably running another Train the Trainer for this material, so stay tuned. We will advertise that if the funding does come our way, and we'll look forward to connecting again. I've been had the privilege of attending both culture change workshops, and as an educator, I'm not kind of one of you, but I feel like one of you because I think it's really important, and we have to prepare the entry-level practitioners as well for hopefully a new reality in long-term care. So thanks.